Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the latest narration of the web series Nature of Predators Book 2. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 54. Memory transcription subject Elias Mayer, former UN Secretary General. Date Standardized Human Time, September 26, 2160. Skulker, World of Death. Seeing that sign at the spaceport had felt strange as I travelled to the Vendel homeworld in search of old friends. Cyber was handling most of the calls of the Shield in the aftermath of our visit. The Suthian was unwavering in her glowing enthusiasm and had lauded my speech during our journey back, long before we knew the results. She'd fired off a message I asked her to, apprising the Sapient Coalition of Federation remnants' unexpected presence and the sailor's unique nature. I found myself hoping against hope that we'd have something to show for our efforts and that I'd made the right decision, speaking my own lines rather than Corrigan's ideations. As of today, there were still 2 planetary defenses to be mounted. I got a sense of déjà vu, hearing that the Arxel rode in to rescue at Tusk. No way. There will not be emotional support animals on Skulker, a furious voice hissed, charcoal grey fur standing upright. The mouthy Vendel looked furious. Yes, it's just a ferret. That's great, Justin. But if we allow one type of pet, you crazy feckles will start putting crocodiles in your luggage. Just because I'm crippled doesn't mean I can't drop your predator ass at 40 years young. That's enough, Rule. The middle-aged man cleared his throat, wearing a metallic-looking jacket. His black hair was slicked back, as if to hide some of the graying roots. I don't mind him. He's having a midlife crisis. Midlife crisis? Then what do I call you? Entire life crisis, because you have not aged gracefully, William Kane. You look like my couch cushions ate you for breakfast and barfed you up, you pasty porridge-faced man. Justin tried to creep past the spaceport security with the ferret, clearly wanting no part in the unhinged shouting match. Roll's hissing intensified, and he placed himself directly in front of the terrored tourist. The human visitor stepped over a few paces to the side as the Vendel followed her, like a basketball guard trying to stop a shot. William smirked, folding his arms and making a little effort to intercede. I'd never seen Vendel that was this feisty, and he wasn't even part of the new generation of unmodded Skulgans. I was a little concerned about passing through security now, and not just because metal detectors would have a lot of problems with me. Perhaps I should contact the Terran embassy and ask if we'd established diplomatic immunity on Skulker. The ferret goes home, or the ferret burns, Realm said darkly, wiggling his claws in a threatening manner. I know it's a carnivore. Its side-facing eyes don't fool me. I'll put it with the rest of the kindling. Justin moved the suitcase further away from the angry Vendel. You wouldn't. Fuzzy is a cute little guy. Humans and fuzzy things. I see a flammable beast. I see more than one, if you keep giving me trouble. Well, we haven't carried flamethrowers for 2 decades. You haven't been allowed to carry a weapon for 10 years. That's why we're on spaceport duty, William commented. Don't listen to him, ma'am. Take the ferret and keep going. Justine gulped and walked past the angry Vendel, bumping shoulders with him. Brown set his livid gaze on his partner as the line on the incoming passengers continued to back up. Flamethrowers? Were these people exterminators? Apart from William's metallic jacket, they didn't look like the predator-burning crew. Plus, I thought Skulker had gotten rid of the institution. This wasn't who I was expecting to welcome us to Vendel World and one of the most tourist-heavy spaceports. Knowing full well that I was next hour up to deal with these individuals, I shuffled up to the security checkpoint with reluctant steps. The duo hadn't even noticed me through their fixation on each other. You undermined my authority, you long pig slouch, Roland roared. That was my moment. I never get to attack humans anymore. They say I can't be trusted. Ha! Me, the most reformed, progressive exterminator. I put up with you. William raised his eyebrows. No, I put up with you, puffed the magic Xeno. And look what you've done. This is why they don't trust you. I count 3 holopads out recording us. I will break the SIM cards in their arms. 2 of the filming Terrans lowered their holopads, and Roll made a blistering eye contact with the last one, until they also relented. That's what I thought. I will find you if you post that. You can't call us exterminators anymore either. Oh yeah, we're the Planet Watch. What Mueller's made up that name? I am an exterminator, and as for the no flamethrower claims, there's more than one way to burn ferrets. Next. More than one way to burn ferrets. Is that a new more than one way to skin a cat? I raised a hesitant hand, hopeful that my metal body would make me somewhat resistant to getting leveled.
Right here, Elias Mayer. You might have seen me on the news recently.
Am I supposed to be impressed? Do you think you're the first dead human I've seen up and about? Roland hissed.
I really hope so.
William facepalmed, shaking his head. Roland had a very interesting acid trip on his 30th birthday party, and ever since then he's gone all shake-buster and believes in ghosts.
I can send you to the afterlife now if you don't believe me. Then you'll see.
The Vendel grumbled.
Feck, Mayer must have witnessed it too. Back me up. He came back from the dead. What is it like to be a ghost?
I recoiled as the Vendel knocked on the back of my hand to hear the sound.
Personal space? It wasn't really like...
It's definitely freaky to think that they took your brain's likeness and put it into a machine, William interjected. I got one of those brain scans a few years ago for a museum exhibit in a historical reform by the curator Heisey. She's old as dirt, got a pretty penny for it. But now, I wonder if they could do that to me, or they could upload me to a USB and I'd be like stuck in there.
How do you know that you're not 1-1 right now? Roland countered. Maybe the Vendel were never real.
Because no simulation could render a face as ugly as yours.
I thought you were going to say no simulation could create the hideous face that you saw in the mirror.
I can't look in the mirror, Rel. It broke from having to reflect your noseless face. You look like sludge that fell from a damn cement truck and hardened as fecked up as possible. The Fossil Special.
Oh, you know all about the Fossil Special. Willie the Love Struck. She drags you around by the...
An angry tourist cupped his hands to his face, shouting at the duo,
Hey, speed it up. We don't have all day. I'll work at whatever pace I please. You're on my fecking planet. You mangy gluttons are the ones who came to me, Roland screeched.
I'm done waiting for you to sit there and bicker about ghosts. I'm leaving. We're leaving right now. They can't stop all of us.
The line behind me began to break up as impatient tourists followed the heckler's lead. The crowd bypassed Roland Williams's checkpoint, ignoring the Vendel's protests. I watched as they filtered out into the wider terminal, and the facial recognition cameras overhead struggled to keep up. My first inclination was to join them, but the 2 Planet Watch officers were standing in my direct path. The last thing I needed was to run over a Vendel civil servant and enjoy the negative publicity that would bring upon synthetic life forms. I stood as still as possible, half hoping that they'd chase after the crowd and unblock my path. One of them seemed to be considering it, and it wasn't the Terran. With an exasperated expression, the herbivore guard swung a paw into Williams's bicep.
What are you doing? Stop them!
The Vendel hissed to his human partner.
William shrugged with nonchalance. He had a point. We can't stop all of them.
Yes, you can. You have a weapon, and if I pop civilians entering Skullgum, I'll join you in not having a weapon. They're violating our sovereignty, trampling over our order and the law.
I cleared my throat, though the sound no longer reduced a scratchy feeling on my tongue.
So, can I go now?
Yes, you know, there's a club for paranormal enthusiasts here on Dye's side. Once a week, we give ghost tours, investigate sightings and activities, compile evidence. It's at Colin's Bar, superhuman-friendly place. You should come to our meeting later today. You'd be a hit.
I'll think about it. If my schedule allows for it, I fibbed. Life of a diplomat.
I hurried off into the rest of the crowd, swiping my luggage from the table next to the Planet Watch officers. Hopefully, the remainder of the journey to visit Tava and Noah Williams would be less memorable. I couldn't help thinking that the spaceport guards did have one excellent point. Anyone's likeness could be uploaded into any machine with a recorded neural layout and enough processing power to house it, without, say, or an escape. As torturous as the revival had been at times, it could have been much worse. There was a chance to continue my work and reconnect with old friends. I hoped the former governor would be pleased to see the robotic version of me, especially after the harrowing circumstances we parted under, and what I asked her to do, knowing full well that dealing with the Oxor hurt her. I remember seeing what was then called Vendel Prime, with the fledgling embassy and refugee camps. Humans fled here, desperate to get out of Dodge with Coulson on the way. So much has changed, mostly for the better. While the population was still predominantly Vendel, our influence was evident. I passed a specialty shop within the spaceport called Goods of Earth. Certain souvenirs at the other stalls, like stuffed animals and snow globes, were clearly targeted at Terran demographic.
Some advertising to the visitors seemed a bit too soon, offering a hotel package designed to recreate running from Earth's bombing with livable bunkers and exterminator actors. It was lost on me why people would want to recreate that, but given that several of my kind were gathered around the holographic ad and discussing interest in it, it must have been popular. A banner was hanging over the exit doors, reading in English and Vendel, proudly celebrating 25 years of Human-Vendel Exchange Program. Sign up for the 2161st class today. I mused joining, imagining that shocked it would be for the modern Skulgun to get me as a partner. Even outside of the tourist hub, I couldn't help but notice that Vendel street vendors had special menus and offerings of condiments for humans. One stand was doing exterminator cooking, placing food inside special containers and blasting it with a flamethrower. The Skulgun performer was doing a host of tricks with the incendiary device, and had accrued a massive crowd and line for his nourishment. Further back, I could spot a history museum, perhaps where William had gotten his scan, advertising exhibits based on the archives, and Vendel fighting back against Federation invaders. Part of me was also compelled to get the tourist experience in Dayside City, but I had to stay focused. I allowed myself a brief listen to the narrated teaser outside, regardless, as it moved more to modern affairs.
The legacy of Governor Veln's visor law, a short-lived, poorly enforced and unpopular mandate to cater to the rural tastes. Humans were once uncommon in small communities on Skulga, and exposure to so-called predators remained limited in the countryside until the most recent decade.
The display outside narrated.
Well, it was repealed after Veln lost re-election. The discrimination lawsuits that followed against the Vendel government and businesses or towns that enforced it were the center of much media attention in the SC. The public fervor was enhanced by leaks of the former governor's sordid exploits, notably involving affairs with human escorts. Streaming title The Trial of Veln captures the larger-than-life spectacle of his fall from grace.
I furrowed my eyebrows at that explanation, comparing it internally to Tava's dignified mannerisms and open-minded acceptance of humanity. How had she lost an election to a clown like Veln? I suppose she had her own skeletons in her closet, having romantic involvement with the UN ambassador, who she picked out as our representative. Perhaps I would have scolded the two for it when I found out at the time, but that ship had sailed 24 years ago. My present hope was to find them both living well, and to see just how much their children took after them. I wandered towards Governor's District train. While Tava no longer lived in the leader's mansion that I could see on the horizon, she did have an upscale home in the residential area near it. She must have been used to the local sights and amenities.
Well, Vern, if you're watching now, I hope that your patch from the motion sickness works, I mumbled to myself. This could be a long train ride if not.
It dawned on me as I trundled onto the cart with what was missing, which I hadn't quite been able to put my finger on. The elevated sense of Skulga's gravity, exacerbating aches and making me feel the extra pressure and weight on my skeleton. This synthetic form was much more durable with a higher load-bearing capacity. I wondered to myself if I was stronger now. Perhaps I could out-bench press bodybuilders, something that would have been a laughable idea to me once. Maybe having my kind as firefighters and EMTs could save lives, if we had the power to lift cars off of a person. I made a mental note to test myself in a gym once I got back to Earth, before settling down in an empty seat. Several Vendel were openly staring and whispered amongst themselves.
"Didn't the exterminator scan him after he died?" one questioned.
Their partner flicked an ear in agreement.
"I don't know how to feel about how we even handle it. Are we just going to act like this is a normal Terran citizen? How do we know it's really Elias Mayer, not some AI emulating him?"
"There is no way to say for sure. I wouldn't want some hollow copy of myself walking around in some tin can body. The real me would be dead anyway. I'd still gone upstairs." I turned my head around towards them, prodding.
"I can hear you, you know."
"We're sorry. It doesn't leave a positive taste in our mouth that human tech companies are copying pasting people's brains,"
one brayed in response. "I know it's unusual, and imagine how I feel. Elias would have agreed with you on a lot of it, but it's still unkind to say that to a sapient being's face. If there's one thing I'd hope that we've learned in the past 2 decades,
It's to try and be accepting, even of people we don't understand, because one day, those people could be you."
The two Vendels shared a glance before switching over to an uncomfortable silence. I bit my lip, hearing several of their own questions and judgments rolling around in their head. The self-doubts had relented a bit around cyber, but being faced with opposition to my present existence always dug up those demons. I turned my eyes towards the window as the train began moving, noticing only nominal discomfort in my gut. The distraction in the form of what I spied in the passing streets would be quite welcome. I spotted a sign that said Skulga Counseling Center, which returned a smile to my lips. After how the Vendel used to handle predator disease cases, I was elated to see that it had changed for the better. There had been a lot of progress here in Skulga, and it seems they restored some of their roots. Is that a strange wrestling gym I see, whizzing by us? I swear, the Vendel I glimpsed inside were butting heads with each other. I continued to observe my surroundings, noting the landmarks of each district. As we drew closer to the place I'd spent most of my time, the UN Embassy had a great deal of foot traffic, with our flag flying proudly in the air alongside the similar Sapien Coalition one. Any Vendel who had business with Earth seemed to visit here. We had full security checkpoints at the compound now, as beefy as the ones back in Vienna. I remembered when the human generals came to visit this place, with none other than Cam petrified of allowing us onto this world, both sticking out from any unexpected noise. Despite the earlier commentary, it was a positive that the gossiping Vendel on the train at least seemed unafraid of me. That was better than what I encountered on the sailor, regardless. The scenery began to look a bit more familiar as I drew closer to Tarver's home, until my gaze unmistakably latched onto a row house that I remembered in vivid detail. There was some new construction added to it, like a patch-up on the burn damage, but I was sucked back to a moment in time I didn't want to be. After my resolution to reach out to the Federation visitors and pledging to form our own alien union, it had seemed that we were on the right track. I'd known that it was all crumbling down around me, as the dust irritated my lungs and air passageways. The terrible ringing in my ears, tinnitus that felt like a rattling screw, was inside my eardrum. I pressed my hands to my earlobes in the present time, keeling over. The row houses were on fire in my mind as chaos ensued, protesters clashing with the UN officers and the sounds of people screaming. The mangled injuries that I'd seen were utterly horrifying, except I hadn't had time to process it after the fact. Tarver had looked at me with reproach, like humans were monsters, so disappointed by the chaos and violence unfolding around her. There had been regret swirling in her horizontal pupils, as if she wished she'd never brought us here at all. That was what she thought of us in my last moments alive. I hadn't known how she could forgive us. My own pain and despondency had been like a stabbing pain in my heart, peeling off the fresh scab of the grief from Earth's death toll. Gunshots, a pop, causing me to stagger with Axley in my arms. Her fur was soft. I'm falling forward into the car, and my dress shirt feels like I've spilled a drink on it. I could feel shivers running down my spine in the present time, as I was left cold and fading. Tarver held me in her arms, whilst it was difficult to come by any thoughts. I remembered latching onto that conversation with Isif, where I'd also been alone and terrified in that dark Titan hotel room. The Vendel was grey, almost the same grey as the Arxel scales. It had been a funny thought. In that last grasp, yet not filling me with mirth at all. I didn't want her to hate us. I didn't want humanity's hope for the future to fall apart. I'd been desperate to try and make things better. It was so difficult to speak, so difficult to move, so distant to watch from inside my own body. Did Tarver think that we were animals? The feeling of suffocation was strong, as it became more difficult to draw breaths. Past and present were one, but I knew that I couldn't breathe now, and I felt its absence become unbearable. I wanted to sob, with all the emotions and images cycling around my brain. We were moving away from the roam houses, just like we had en route to the hospital. There was no fighting the Reaper's touch, with all the uncertainties that it entailed. My legacy was that I'd failed humanity and Earth. The gunshot's sound played on loop. My mind drifted to an imaginary wound in my stomach. The scenery had me locked in that moment, recalling the less peaceful side of death. Elias! Vern's voice spoke into my ears, despite the fact that Tillfish was nowhere to be seen. Snap out of it! Look at the ground. I believe seeing the place where you died again triggered some memories, and not good ones. I'm sure it's a difficult event to remember. Skulker holds a lot of baggage for you, and that's okay. You're fine. You're okay. I realized that my mouth was hanging open, as I strickenly tried to suck in breaths and sat folded up against the window. The passengers were definitely staring at me now. So I raised a hand to assure them I was fine, despite the fact that I felt like I'd been running from a grizzly bear. I knew I couldn't answer the Tillfish out loud, or they'd really think that I was crazy, talking to myself. The first aliens to hear a human arguing aloud with themselves must have, well, that was neither here nor there. Sorry I got caught up in the memory cascade for a moment. Did you just speak inside my mind, Bernd? Yes, you seemed like you were spiraling and needed a jolt. It's easy enough to transmit audio data straight to your senses, since your ears are basically just a microphone, which I'm speaking into. How did you think the UN was going to communicate if something went wrong out in the Seda? The scientist answered. So I'm hearing voices that aren't there now, thanks to your little technology. That'll go over great. You can be inside my head whenever I respect your privacy typically, but I was just trying to help. I didn't want you to have a breakdown on the train, Elias. Look, I'll get out of your ear. Why don't you look at something to ground you? Transport yourself back to the sailor instead. I know you kept the messages you got after the meeting, and you could listen to those to wind back down. Fine. That's not a bad idea, but get out. I was glad that I could manually blink several times as a way to try and snap myself out of it. It was unsettling to hear Vern's phantom voice in my skull, but it had been a better option than getting locked into replaying the moment of my death. It hadn't even occurred to me that Skullgirl might cause all of it to come rushing back, with all the fight-or-flight responses and overwhelming stimuli that were burned into my brain. Pulling up my messages on the holopad, I spotted a text from Cyber. It read, I need a robotic me, even if I'm still alive, to handle all the phone calls I'm getting. Can you ask the UN to speed up the Sudian clone assembly line? In spite of myself, it earned a chuckle. Trying to keep my mind focused on my current life, I thumbed through the recording that I had of the call I received on the way back from the sailor, and hit play. The results of my speech had offered something of a verdict on whether digital me was good enough, and whether I'd failed humanity once more when we needed allies to survive. End of chapter.
I would like to thank our T5 members and patrons, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Vidmori, 050, Dragzoon W.R.E, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.